All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Dolly Madison Boulevard corridor study meeting. So just make sure you're all in the right spot. So good evening. We're here to discuss the Dolly Madison Corridor Boulevard presentation. I am Mike Garcia. I'll be your facilitator for this evening. I just first want to get some housekeeping out of the way so that we can get the most out of the meeting. For those who are not familiar with Teams, we'll go over how to raise and lower your hand to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. For those of you who are familiar with it, that's great, but we'll go over that still anyways. The chat feature is enabled, but we are requesting that people hold off on putting your questions in the chat until the conclusion of the presentation. We want to use the chat for technical support and to know if people are having any issues hearing a presenter so that we can make adjustments, either ask them to speak louder or slow down, just make sure that we can kind of get the most out of the presentation. If a term is not clear during the presentation, please note that and we'll try to address that in a timely manner during the presentation. So with that, I wanted to kind of introduce a few of the staff that you'll be hearing from this evening. Farouk Hasanajan will be assisting. He's going to assisting with the technical difficulties and to help pull the questions out of the chat when it's time for the Q&A feature. Maggie Chi is our project manager and the main presenter this evening. Greg Steverson is the Deputy Director of FCDOT, and he'll also be helping to answer questions this evening. We have a few other staff here from FCDOT, as well as consultant help from Kimberly Horn. I'd also like to acknowledge Jane Edmondson from the Supervisor's Office is here as well.
Good
So with
evening.
that, good evening, Jane. Did you do anything you wanted to say?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Anxious to see the presentation.
Yes. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Greg Steverson. He'll help set the background before he turns it over to Maggie. All right, take it away, Greg.
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. I've been having some Teams problems in the past, but hopefully vocally y'all can hear me. But good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Steverson. And for those of you who may have attended the 2019 meeting, you might remember me as the project manager and the chief of the Site Analysis and Transportation Planning Division. Since then, I've actually become the deputy director here at FCDOT, and Maggie has graciously stepped in to take over the role of project management over the study. But I'm here to kind of, as a familiar face, but also to give you a quick recap of the purpose and need for the study and to kind of prepare you for what Maggie's going to be talking to you about this evening. So this study was developed kind of out of the Tyson's neighborhood study, which at the time looked at 30 intersections around Tyson's to evaluate future conditions and look for future long-term solutions. So 4 of the locations that were part of the neighborhood study, which are Dolly Madison, Lewinsville, Dolly Madison, Old Dominion, Lewinsville, Balls Hill, and Great Falls Chain Bridge, were all a part of that study. And at the time, the study had looked at potentially providing grade separated interchange at Dolly Madison and Lewinsville as a long-term solution. But I think staff at the time thought, is there some potential shorter term solution or shorter term improvement that could be done to provide some benefit and potentially stave off the need to provide grade separation at that particular location, again, in the short term. And so this study was developed and undertaken out of that to basically look at the 4 intersections that I mentioned, along with some adjacent ones as a corridor, as a whole, to number one, see if short-term solutions could be developed. And then if we could develop some short-term solutions, how those solutions interacted with the other adjacent intersections, looking at things as a corridor overall. So as part of the study, this Dolly Madison study, we started in 2017, near the end of 2017, I believe, and looked at existing conditions. Again, the conditions were 2017 conditions. We looked at potential short-term solutions. At the time, short-term solutions meant 10 years into the future, which is 2027, which is actually 5 years into the future from now. We had a wonderful meeting in 2019 that some of you attended, and we had conducted a survey to kind of ask people's thoughts about things. And our plan was to come back in 2020 and say, here's the results of the survey, here's our recommendations, and then the world turned upside down. And so fortunately for us, I think hopefully we're approaching the light at the end of the pandemic tunnel. I'm hopeful. And so with that, we're back to kind of discuss the results of the survey, but also and our recommendations, but also because this is a short-term study and we were looking at short-term solutions and short-term traffic numbers, and the pandemic really changed how traffic has operated in the county and in the country as a whole. We really also wanted to come bring to you some thoughts on how the pandemic may have changed how we review the results of the study. So before I turn it over to Maggie, and I know I probably talked long enough, I just want to state we've done a lot of work here. We put a lot of time and effort into this study, but we also know it's been quite some time since, quite a bit of time since we last talked to you all. And so we want to give people a recap of the information that led up to the 2019 meeting, but we also have a lot of new information to cover. And even more importantly than that, we want to leave a good amount of time for questions and answers and comments. Presenting the history and covering all this new information, literally we could fill up the entire meeting just with that, but we respect everybody's time and we really want to make sure that at the end we have time for questions and answers. So we're probably going to recap some of the things leading up to 2019, maybe a little bit more quickly than we might ordinarily do things. Again, so we have time to present the new information and have time for questions. But if there's something we talk about in the background or we go over too fast, or there's something that you don't understand about the background, when the time comes for question and answers, feel free to ask as many questions about background as you are about the new information, because we want everybody to be able to understand not only what we're presenting, the new information tonight, but the background, why we're doing this, and all that information, especially if you weren't able to attend the 2019 meeting. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to allow Maggie to take the presentation from here.
Thank you, Greg. That's a nice summary of my entire presentation tonight. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see my presentation cover page.
You're good to go.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second community meeting for the Dolly Madison Boulevard Corridor Study. My name is Maggie Chi. I'm with Fairfax County Department of Transportation Planning Section. So this is the agenda for tonight's meeting. First, we will go over the project background, existing conditions, and the initial improvement concepts, as well as the feedback survey results we received after the community meeting. After that, we will talk about additional improvements and the new scenarios that have been developed since last meeting. Talk about some additional volume consideration as a result of COVID. Look at the traffic analysis results. Finally, wrap it up with the study summary, findings, and the next steps. After the presentation, we will have opportunities for questions and answers. So this section includes a reintroduction to the information we discussed in the last community meeting and the new information, which is the community feedback we received. So this map provides an overview of the study area. So this is Dolly Madison, just east of Dusty Road Interchange. There are two main intersections. The first one is Dolly Madison at Lewinsville and Great Falls Street. The second one is Dolly Madison and at Old Dominion Drive. So we also included a few other intersections to fill up the network. So this segment here carries a significant volume of traffic during weekday commuting periods. So this intersection experiences recurring peak congestion, significant delays, and heavy queues. The purpose of this study is to identify short to midterm improvements that reduce congestion along the Dolly Madison Boulevard corridor with minimal right-of-way impacts. So first, we look at the existing conditions, which was 2017, to identify corridor issues and the challenges. Then we identified and evaluated short-term improvements that provide benefits now and into the near future, which is about 10 years in the future. In this study, it's 2027. Then we look at how well a long-term solution such as interchange might work. So the criteria we used to evaluate those various scenarios include average delay that vehicles experience at a given intersection, including all movements. Level of service is a qualitative measure that describes how intersections operate using the familiar school grade designation A through F. based upon the delay. The table here shows you the level of service and the corresponding range of the intersection delay. Other criteria include queuing and travel time. So public outreach is a very important element for this study. This is the project website. We held our first public meeting on June 13, 2019 at the Mclean Community Center. So we collected feedback on improvement concepts through an online survey, the website, and the email. The survey includes 3 questions. First question is asking you which of the intersection improvement concepts would you generally favor for future implementation. The second question is asking you which one would you be generally opposed to having moved forward for future implementation. The third question is between short-term solutions and interchange solutions, which of which path forward are you most supportive? So we received 138 unique responses, including 98 survey responses and email feedback. So concept 1 is to provide 3 continuous lanes on eastbound Dolly Madison. So the benefit is you will get an additional eastbound through lane at the Dallas Toll Road interchange to address capacity limitation. Concept 2 is the continuation of concept 1. So you will have 3 continuous lanes on eastbound Dolly Madison through the intersection at Lewinsville, Great Falls Street. The benefit is you will get additional eastbound through lane all the way through the intersection. This concept only makes sense if concept 1 is also implemented. The benefit of concepts 1 and 2 is that a third travel lane provides additional capacity to move vehicles through the intersection and improve overall intersection operations. So concepts 1 and 2 received 53% and 44% supporting respectively. Some positive feedback include they increase capacity, help with eastbound traffic flow. They avoid lane merge, reduce congestion and queuing around the Dallas Toll Road. The negative feedback includes they might require to remove median strips and trees. So this improvement includes 2 concepts. The first one is to restrict the left turn from Boss Hill Road onto Lewinsville Road. You will make a right turn, then make a U-turn at Old Maple Drive. So this is to simplify Boss Hill Lewinsville intersection conflicts and the spacing issue with the downstream intersection here. The second part is to add additional lane on Lewinsville Road to provide additional capacity and stacking space. So for concept 3, the community feedback was divided between proponents and opponents, 38% of supporting and 39% opposing. The result relates to the fact there are 2 concepts included in one scenario. So there's support for adding capacity on Lewinsville, but not supporting the closure of Boss Hill left turns and the rerouting of the traffic to U-turn at Old Maple Drive. So concept 4 is Dolly Madison Old Dominion partial jug handle. This one includes restricted left turns from Dolly Madison to Old Dominion Drive from both directions to allow for more green time for other movements, and restricted eastbound left turn from Dolly Madison onto Ingleside Avenue to provide storage for additional westbound lane on Dolly Madison. This triangle area will provide the rerouting options for the restriction movements. So concept 4 received more opposition than support, 14% supporting and 41% opposing. The concerns include potential for rerouting traffic through the neighborhoods and increased traffic on Old Dominion Drive. Concept 5, now we are going back to the intersection at Lewinsville Road and Great Falls Street. So this concept will provide 2 exclusive left turn lanes along Lewinsville Road and Great Falls Street to allow for a more efficient traffic signal timing structure at this intersection. So concept 5 generally received a strong support, 48% supporting and only 27% opposing. Some positive feedback include this will remove the split phase, allowing more efficient signal timing, and also add longer left turn lanes on Great Falls Street to increase stacking capacity The concern is there's a need to provide the access for the adjacent apartments here. Concept 6 is to provide 3 westbound travel lanes on Dolly Madison from Old Dominion Drive to Lewinsville Road. So the benefit is there's an additional through lane for this entire stretch on westbound, which will significantly reduce queues and delays. The drawback is this will impact access for a number of locations on this segment. So concept 6 received a fairly strong opposition via the survey, 34% opposed, but much stronger opposition via email and website feedback. The major concern is the access for Evans Farm, Mayflower, Boyle Hill Estates, etc. The community is worried about losing for movement, especially left-in out access to Dolly Madison, requiring them to make U-turns at congested intersections or access to other roadways. For comparison purpose, 2 long-term alternatives were also developed and evaluated. So this is to just evaluate an idea of interchange at 2 locations. One is Dolly Madison at Lewinsville, Great Falls Street. The other location is Dolly Madison at Old Dominion Drive. So the first alternative only has the interchange at the Lewinsville, Great Falls Street intersection. Alternative 2 includes 2 interchanges at 2 intersections. So the interchange concepts received mixed community feedback. Some folks think interchanges are the best solutions to solve the congestion issues, best to invest in the proper infrastructure. Others think interchanges are not the right choice for the community, negatively impact the nature and the feel of the community. The survey results were also mixed. Dolly Madison and the Lewinsville Great Falls interchange had support. Dolly Madison and the Old Dominion intersection did not receive support. Now that I have provided an overview of the different concepts and the potential benefits of each, I would like to discuss the results of the operational analysis completed for the existing, no build, and the build scenarios. This table here summarizes delay and the level of service, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation, are some of the evaluation criteria. So AMP conditions are generally mitigated and can sustain a 10-year horizon. This table shows delay and the level of service during the PM peak hour. So I wanted to point out we have 2 short-term alternatives. The first one is this column here called a short-term build that combines 5 improvement concepts from concept 1 to 5. The next column is called a short-term build alternative. That one combines 6 improvement concepts from concept 1 to 6. So as you can see on the no build and the short-term build, several intersections, they operate with significant delays. They still show numerous issues, but PM peak conditions can be substantially improved with additional westbound through lane on Dolly Madison, which is concept 6, which is this build alternative. So between the 2 interchange alternatives, the second one, when you have 2 interchanges under this scenario, traffic conditions are significantly improved as well. So that's where I ended at the last public meeting plus community feedback. So in the next section, we will talk about new information that has been developed since that meeting. So throughout the process, even as the team provided improvements to adjacent intersections, the intersection of Great Falls Cambridge Road, they continued to fail during the PM peak. In the previous tables, this intersection continued to show significant delay. So at the last meeting, we promised the community we will take another look. So this slide shows some mitigation measures we identified for this intersection. So first, we need to optimize the signal operations to coordinate with Dolly Madison Boulevard and operate right turn overlap in the northbound and the westbound directions. Next, restripe the existing northbound approach to eliminate the left turn lane and provide 2 exclusive through lanes and 1 exclusive right turn lane. So the rerouting, they can use either McGarrity Road or Dolly Madison Road. With these configuration-based changes, it will help reduce the overall intersection delay significantly. So for the study corridor, one major traffic challenge is westbound Dolly Madison during the PM peak hour. So the westbound approach at the intersection of Lewinsville, Great Fall Street experiences significant delays and heavy queues. Those queues create a spillback and can cause the queue spillback to the upstream intersections at Dolly Madison at Old Dominion Drive. Since we decided not to do concept 6 based on the community feedback, 2 additional concepts were developed to mitigate these operational issues. Concept 7 includes an option lane on westbound Dolly Madison at the split to the Dallas Toll Road. So this concept helps the downstream traffic distribution onto the Dallas Toll Road and into Tysons. The intended outcome is to balance lane utilization along the westbound approach and increase throughput through the intersection. So concept 8 is to extend rightmost through lane, shown in yellow here, for the westbound approach at the intersection of Lewinsville and Great Fall Street. So the thought was that we could add a lane westbound on Dolly Madison, basically between where the road opens up from the intersection back to Evans Farm, in order to basically get a little bit of extra storage space to see if it helps to distribute the queue and maybe improve the traffic conditions at the Old Dominion intersection. So this table here shows a comparison between the two new scenarios we developed. The first one is called a community preferred scenario, which only includes the concepts that had community support, plus Great Falls Cambridge mitigation, because that one was shown in the past meeting, and we promised the community we will take a look. So we feel it's appropriate to include that one in the community preferred scenario. So the second one is the staff preferred scenario. So this one includes a few more additional improvements. The first one is concept 3. We decided to bring it back to this scenario is because the close signal spacing of Boss Hill Road to Dolly Madison Boulevard is not ideal, in particular during the PM peak. Although the public feedback did not demonstrate the support of the left turn restriction, by reintroducing it, it will help simplify Boss Hill Lewinsville intersection conflicts and the spacing issue with Dolly Madison and Lewinsville. So the second one we brought back is a modified jack handle concept. So previously concept 4 includes 3 left turn restrictions. In this modified concept, there's only left turn restrictions at Old Dominion Drive. The left turn restriction at Ingleside Avenue is eliminated. So if we don't include any improvements at Old Dominion Drive, the benefits realized at Great Falls Street and Lewinsville Road are negated by longer queues, delays at Old Dominion Drive, particularly in the eastbound direction. So by reintroducing it, it will help more efficient eastbound through movement operations. And this scenario also includes concepts 7 and 8, which I just talked about. They together substitute concept 6 that was eliminated to accommodate westbound queues at Lewinsville Great Falls without impacting upstream intersections. So in this slide, we will talk about some additional volume considerations we gave over the course of the study due to a couple of major factors. The first factor is the pandemic impact. The chart on the bottom shows the traffic comparison in the past 2 years using continuous count station data in the suburbs of the metropolitan Washington region. So the green line here is 2019 weekday traffic volume, and the dark purple line here represents 2020 to 2022 weekday traffic volumes. So as you can see, there's a big reduction, traffic reduction around March, April 2020. But then at July 2021, the traffic has rebounded to over 90% of 2019 levels. Although traffic has almost rebounded to the level prior to COVID, there's really no traffic growth in the recent 2 to 3 years. The lingering work at home effect of the COVID pandemic will also impact the short-term conditions. The second factor is additional network connectivity that has been constructed since 2017, such as Jones Branch Connector, the opening of I-66 express lanes inside the Beltway, and the improvements to I-66 eastbound between the Dallas Toll Road connector ramp and Boston. Those new roads and improvements are supposed to divert some traffic away from using local roads. So the previous 2027 volume represents a conservative estimate that accounts for background traffic growth and side trips from Tysons. A decision was made to remove background traffic growth due to the two factors I just talked about, and evaluate a new volume scenario, which represents a more realistic short-term condition for the study area. The volumes under this new scenario are existing condition volumes plus development-related trips that we know about. Next, I would like to discuss the results of the operational analysis completed for the existing no-build, and the two new scenarios using the revised volumes. So this table summarizes delay and level of service during the AM peak hour. As you can tell, AM is not the problem. And this table shows delay and the level of service during the PM peak. So under the no build, some intersections operate with a significant delay. The most significant comparison between scenarios occurs at the intersection of Dolly Madison at Great Falls Lewinsville Road. So the average delay at this intersection drops about 40% between no build and the community preferred, and then drops additional 50% in the staff preferred scenario. The other intersection that shows a significant delay reduction is the Dolly Madison at Ingleside Avenue. Next few slides will provide comparisons of queuing results in different scenarios. This graphic shows the average queues during the AM peak. So the existing condition is shown in yellow, no build is red, and the community preferred is purple, and the staff preferred is blue. The queue results track with delay results in terms of the performance of different scenarios. In general, AM queues do not have much problem. So this graphic shows a comparison of maximum queues during the AM peak. Similar pattern with the average queues. AM is not the problem. So the PM peak is when the greatest benefit is realized as a result of those short-term improvements. Similar to AM, the eastbound and the westbound approaches of Dolly Madison Boulevard significantly improved in the staff preferred scenario when compared to both the no build and the community preferred scenario. If you look at here, the no build is red. So the westbound queue is about 4,000 feet. And the community preferred in purple is about 2,600 feet. And the staff preferred in blue is only 200 feet. So this is a comparison of a maximum queue. It's more visually impactful because as you can see, under both no build and community preferred, the queue spills back and fill up the entire stretch here, then go further from the Old Dominion Drive. So again, the no build cumulative westbound queue in red is 9,600 feet. Then community preferred in purple from this intersection all the way passing Old Dominion, then further upstream is 6,700 feet. And the staff preferred in blue, that's 1,200 feet. Another approach also shows significant delay on the no build. If we don't do anything, that's no build. It's the southbound queue from Boss Hill Road. The queue stands about 1 mile. So the slide here shows AM peak travel time comparison, which follows queuing and the delay patterns, with the staff preferred scenario outperforming the no build and the community preferred scenarios. So we have eastbound Dolly Madison, basically from Anderson Road to Ingleside Avenue. Then the westbound is the other way around, from Ingleside Avenue to Anderson Road. So the westbound Dolly Madison Boulevard indicates 1.8 minute improvement from the community preferred to staff preferred. So similarly, travel time results here indicates the staff preferred scenario performs better than the community preferred and the no builder scenarios. There's about a 2.7 minute travel time reduction between community preferred and the staff preferred scenario in the westbound direction. This translates to waiting one less signal cycle when you travel the corridor. So this slide talks about study, summary, and the findings. A wide range of short-term improvements concepts have been identified to address traffic conditions along Dolly Madison Boulevard. First, we developed and evaluated 6 short-term improvements. Then the concept 6 was eliminated based on the community feedback. After that, we developed a couple of more improvement concepts to address the traffic conditions. So the traffic analysis shows with the short-term improvements, they were able to address traffic conditions along Dolly Madison Boulevard. Short-term improvement can mitigate traffic conditions with a post-pandemic traffic volume scenario. So if traffic stays similar to where things were before the pandemic, we were able to get acceptable traffic operations in the short term. So both the staff preferred and the community preferred scenarios perform better than the no build scenario. Between the 2 new scenarios, staff preferred scenario works the best. So we think it makes sense to do the short-term improvements, as we think due to the pandemic, we can make traffic work with those improvements. But if traffic volumes substantially increase beyond the pre-pandemic levels, we may need to look at a larger scale improvements for long-term conditions. At some point, the ultimate solution would wind up being an interchange, but if we can find ways to keep volume steady, we may be able to avoid that. We now have a manual of mitigation measures and the corresponding indicators, those evaluation criteria as to what impacts, good or bad, we can expect regarding study area operations. Not all concepts need to be implemented. But the few concepts implemented, the less likely improved traffic conditions are to be achieved. So these improvements could be implemented individually or in conjunction with one another. So we would like to hear from you as to which scenario do you prefer, and within that preferred scenario, which improvements you find challenging, and what your top picks are. So next steps, we will prioritize the short-term improvement concepts using factors which may include operations, feedback from the community and the supervisor, right-of-way impacts, cost, safety, and constructability. After that, we will finalize the study and the report. So for the improvements that moving forward, the next step is to conduct feasibility study and develop conceptual design. We will also identify funding to move project forward. That's the end of today's presentation. We have project website here. The recording will be posted on the website in the next couple of days. We will also share the slides from the presentation as well. We would like to receive your feedback. The comment period is 30 days. If you need a longer time, please contact me directly. We are more than happy to accommodate your request. So with that, now I'll open the floor for questions.
All right, thank you. Oh, let me see if I get rid of the echo. All right, I hope that worked. All right, we have our first question that came in. I'm going to read it, but when I read it, I'm going to go back and go over some of the logistics for everybody else on the meeting tonight. So the question came in when you were on slide 26 and talking about the modified jug handle at Old Dominion and jug handle Old Dominion. And the question was, what about left turn onto Mayflower with the modified jug handle? So I'll let you look at that for a moment while I go over some of the logistics with people. So for those who are calling on the phone, when you first called in, you probably heard some prompts about how to raise your hand and unmute yourself. So just to let you know kind of how to do that, if you push *5, that will allow you to raise your hand. And then what we'll do is we'll call on you, but we'll read the 10-digit number that you're calling from because there's no other way for us to recognize you. So when we do that, then you can we'll enable your microphone and we'll tell you when it is enabled, and then you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. When you finish asking your question, you'll hit *6 to remute yourself and go back to the queue. So what we're asking for is to kind of people keep their general comments and questions to about 1 minute for as far as what you ask, and that'll give us a chance to kind of go in and answer the question. And then if you have more questions, we'll just put you back in the queue and just kind of give everyone a chance to ask their questions as we go through this. So if you are on the computer, there are 2 ways that you can actually participate. You can raise your hand, and there's the hand tool right at the top, kind of closer to it's called React. It says raise your hand. You can do that, and it'll flag us. Then we can tell you that we can see that you've raised your hand. When that happens, then we'll go ahead and enable your microphone, and then that'll allow you to unmute yourself, and you can ask your question that way. And then when you're done, just put your hand back down, and we'll put you back into the queue. The second way to do it is what people are finding out now, or a third way, is that you could type your questions in the chat, and Farouk was going to help me by pulling them out, and we'll make sure to ask them of our panel members, and make sure to get either if it's a comment, we'll note it. If it's a question, we'll make sure to get it answered. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Maggie to answer that question. And the question again was, what about left turn onto Mayflower with the modified jug handle?
So I do not have a concept, a graphic to show modified concept for, but it's very similar to this one, except we will no longer have the left turn restriction at Ingleside Avenue. So the left turn restriction will be only at Old Dominion Drive. And because we eliminated the left turn restriction at Ingleside Avenue, plus we eliminated concept 6 altogether. So there's no impact to the access to any of those communities along Dolly Madison, including Mayflower.
Great. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go to the questions coming into the chat. So the second one I have here is, what about ways to control the loading onto Lewinsville from Liberty Crossing? That is a key influence on the Balls Hill and Lewinsville intersections. And I'm going to either look at Maggie or Greg for this one. And if we can go to a picture, that would always help. Yes.
Are we talking about the Old Maple part or the Windy Hill part?
That is hard for me to discern from the
Well,
question.
yeah, sorry, that was me kind of opining to the person.
Maybe answer both, I guess, and see if that answers the question.
Well, yeah. So there's kind of 2 access points into that area. I think if we're talking about the what I call the building with 3 letters or what have you, and so part of what I think we're doing, and I don't know, Maggie, if you've got the number 3 up there, concept 3 up there. So I don't know if you're talking about Old Maple Drive that's there, but part of, I think, what we're attempting to do in terms of helping access there is to have the potential for the additional lane. I don't think we specifically were attempting to either restrict or do anything to control specific access from Old Maple, or I forgot on the other side, the other access point specifically. I think what we were more so trying to do was provide storage space and capacity for Lewinsville itself. And because the intersection where Balls Hill is so close to Dolly Madison, provide a way so that that intersection doesn't create such a big of a hindrance there that close to the Dolly Madison and Lewinsville intersection itself. I'm not quite sure if I completely answered that, but in the end, I don't think we were necessarily trying to limit or in some way restrict access from that Liberty Crossing campus there.
Okay. So what I'm going to ask Maggie to do, I'm going to take these a little bit out of order because this one's going to help. So Maggie, can you please define the jug handle or partial jug handle, particularly at Dolly Madison and Old Dominion? And
Sure.
then after Maggie answers that question, I'm going to go to Janet Reagan, who has raised their hand.
So I guess the question is to understand how this works.
Yes, please define jug handle or partial jug handle, particularly at Dolly Madison and Old Dominion. I think they want you to kind of define the concept and then actually show how it works.
Yeah, so sorry, I was only able to provide a very high level information on this one due to the time constraint, but now during the Q&A, I'm more than happy to walk you through the details. So concept 4 is definitely very, what do we call, unconventional, but basically what happens at the intersection of Old Dominion Drive, this intersection, first of all, also experienced very heavy delay, heavy queues. So because of the demand on all approaches are very high, they're competing for the green time. So what we propose is to restrict the left turns from Dolly Madison. I will start with eastbound left turn. So instead of turning left at this intersection, you will go through the intersection, make a right turn, then another right turn, then going back to where you were planning to go. So that's eastbound left turn rerouting. Then if you look at the westbound left turn, that one actually I think is actually faster because you don't need to travel all the way through to this point, turning left. You can just turn left at Ingleside Avenue, then go to where you were supposed to go. So and also I forgot to mention the signals will be added to these 2 locations to facilitate that and make it's more safe to drive through or for the pedestrian and the cyclist as well.
Okay, so if you can enable Janet Reagan's microphone.
Yes, Ms. Janet Reagan, you are unmuted. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. This is Jim Reagan, Janet's husband. I'm
Sorry.
actually using her tablets. That's fine. She would ask similar questions, I think. I happen to live in Evans Farm, so I'm focused on that aspect of it. And I've got a couple parts to my question. I'm not whether I totally understand this or not, but is the proposal involve having additional lane eastbound and westbound, or is it just one additional lane being added?
So on the previous concept 6, that one includes additional lane on westbound only, and only this concept includes additional lane for the entire stretch. None of the other concepts have that proposed.
So previously there had been some discussion of both the east and westbound lane,
Yes.
and now we're just talking westbound. So
yes, we have other improvement concepts to help with the eastbound traffic flow, but when you talk about additional travel lane for the entire stretch, the concept 6 is the only one which has that component, and also concept 6 has been eliminated due to the community feedback.
okay.
Yeah, that was the part I wanted to make sure we were clear about. So this was the concept that we had initially proposed, but and I think there were some questions in the chat as well about access to Mayflower and access to Evans Farm.
Right.
The main reason we basically scrapped this one is because it would eliminate lefts into and out of those locations. And so that one, we just decided, especially considering the feedback, that it didn't make sense to move forward with it.
All right. Well, I'll hang my shotgun back up on the wall now.
Look, I felt the tomatoes at the last meeting, even when we hadn't done the survey and we hadn't asked for feedback. I could sense in the audience the laser eyes and the tomatoes being loaded to be thrown. So I knew where this one was going before it even happened.
So just to drive that nail all the way into the board, so we'll be able to make the left-hand turn going westbound into our community. Is that off of Dolly Madison, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and now when we exit and have to make a U-turn to go, come out that gate to go to the Beltway, we go east and then make a U-turn and go west. So that still will be possible?
You're talking about coming out of Mayflower or Evans Farm?
Out of Evans Farm, make a right, go east, and then do a U-turn to go west on Dolly Madison.
So Evans Farm would still have the median break that it has today.
Okay.
We're not proposing to eliminate any of the median breaks on Dolly Madison under any of the scenarios.
Okay, I have just a couple other quick questions and I'll get out of the way. So the landscaping along the road there, will that be preserved? Will we have grass and trees between the lanes, or how's that gonna look? Can you get the lane without destroying the median landscaping? I guess ask it that way.
So I think now you'd be referring to, because this concept is not moving forward, I think now you'd be referring to either, what was it, 7 or 8? I forget which one it was.
Oh, yeah. 8, 8 also, that's 8 extends from the outermost lane. So I don't know. I don't think that will impact the median or
Okay,
the trees.
so there's enough right of way. Yeah, right. And my final question is there a connection to improving Chain Bridge associated with this, or is that a totally separate subject?
The entirety of Chain Bridge, or that the specific intersection of Chain
There was
Bridge?
discussion at our June meeting of extending and expanding Chain Bridge to get down to the development that's going on around the metro station.
Oh, you're talking about to the west of.
In Tyson's, right?
Correct, yeah. Is that
So, as a part of this particular study, that was not a specific improvement that we developed. The road itself does connect over there.
Right.
It connects over to Anderson, but our particular study had not proposed widening it per se, any more than it currently kind of is.
Do you know if that's under consideration?
I'd have to check. It would, if it were, it would be part of a development-based thing. It's not, as far as I know, on any county plans for the county to do. And so I think if it were to be something that was going to be done, I think it would be part of a development that's going on over there. But I'd have to check on that. That I don't know the answer to.
Okay, thank you for your time. I appreciate it very
No
much.
problem.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, Farouk, if you can go ahead and disable the microphone. All right, we're going to step back up here. So, Maggie, I think she'll go to you. Could you explain the definition of an interchange? More specifically, I think there were a couple of slides about interchanges at 123 in Old Dominion, at 123 in Great Falls. How is an interchange different than what is there today?
Actually, I might tackle this one because
Sure. No problem.
so part of the reason, and the reason why when we said interchange, and I don't know, for those that weren't at the 2019 meeting, I was very, very, I don't call it adamant, but I try to be very straightforward about what we didn't want to do is start to talk about what type of interchange it might be, because I felt like that would wind up devolving into a conversation of, well, this one will require this sort of right of way, or that one will require that sort of right of way. And so what we were trying to do was evaluate the concept of basic grade separation, which is one of the roads goes either over or under one of the other roads. How they interact, how, you get from the Great Falls or Lewinsville over to Dolly Madison and vice versa. We didn't want to go heavy into that because there's maybe not a million. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And we didn't want to get into the nuances of an interchange from the perspective of, I didn't even know if anybody even wanted necessarily to do an interchange. So I wanted to just look at conceptually what might an interchange do from an operational perspective. And then if people were like, yeah, we're really interested in this interchange, then we could go down the path of, well, let's look at some types of interchanges, impacts and that sort of thing. But I didn't want to go down that path if people were like, well, we don't even want grade separation here. But the general concept is that either Dolly Madison or Great Falls Lewinsville, one would go over top of the other one and not connect and not directly connect at the intersection, but there would be some sort of, feeder roads that would get you from one to the other. But the general concept is to not have them connect at the intersection itself.
Okay. Next question is, what about eliminating left turn from Balls Hill only during certain hours?
Flyover.
So I guess that's kind of time of day, left turn restrictions. I'm not aware whether it can be done in this location. Typically, we will need to coordinate with the VDOT to understand the basically operational feasibility, that type of things, you know. So
I
we
think
can
what it
definitely, yeah, go ahead.
I think what it really boils down to, can it be done? Theoretically, yes. Enforcement is always the biggest issue with time of day type restrictions. And so the struggle is, theoretically, you could do it and say, you know, from 7 to 9, you can't make this maneuver. From 4 to 6, you can't make this, but all other times you can. And, you know, it would preserve the access during other parts of the day. But whether or not during the times when people aren't supposed to do it, they wouldn't actually do it, and how much enforcement it would take to get people to not do it, that always becomes the challenge. And so I won't go as far as to say it's not a good idea or that it can't be done. There's just there's some drawbacks to it, and it's got to be, if you're gonna do it, it's really got to be monumentally worth it to do it, because the logistics of trying to, you know, allow it during certain points in the day and not allowing it at other points, and how the signal works and all that other stuff becomes a challenge. You know, I won't go as far as to say like, no, there's no way it can happen. It's just, it can be very challenging to do. And so we've got to, if that's like really where we decide to go, there's going to have to be a lot of time and effort spent into how it might work, how we would enforce it, you know, the benefits of it and all of that sort of stuff. So that would be my answer to that.
I'll just chime into this one a little bit. We're actually have enacted something like this along the Parkway at Burke Center Parkway, Fairfax County Parkway, and Burke Center Parkway. There is a turn restriction happening now, and it's controlled by an arrow. But one of the things that makes it effective is that there's a lot of volume in the opposite direction that really doesn't allow people to make a left turn safely, and they recognize that. So they go down to another intersection where the left turn is allowed to make sure that they can make it safely. When you get gaps in the operations, sometimes people think that there's a false sense that they can actually do it, and it might kind of mess it up. So it is something that we'd have to look at to see how that would actually work. Moving on, this is a comment, and I think what we'll do is have to just note it, but I'm going to read it. Can staff prepare 2 comprehensive graphics images that incorporate the choices with the changes highlighted? One for all the staff choices and one for all the community choices. That would make it easier for everyone to better understand the impact of the changes. So that's a comment. It's a good comment. We'll see what we can kind of do to prepare graphics that address that particular comment question. So thank you. Excuse me. Next question. Study where all about traffic going through our neighborhood, but no study about the pedestrians or bicyclists. Any one of these options at Old Dominion would make it harder to cross Dolly Madison. So this was a traffic study. We understand that. I think as we move forward, do you want to go forward?
Well, I would say that, so one of the, I would say, benefits, whether it was a specific benefit that was, you know, done on purpose or whether it you know, just kind of does help, is the jug handle concept does provide an actual signal at Old Dominion and or Dolly Madison and Ingleside, which doesn't currently exist. Right now, it's, I believe it's just, you can make a left from Dolly Madison to and from the 2 side streets, but I don't believe you can come out of the side streets and get onto Dolly Madison, making a left at least. And I know there had been some conversation and concerns about crossing to get to the various things back down Ingleside. And so a signal there would definitely help from the pedestrian standpoint, because I know right now it's an uncontrolled crossing. I can't remember if there's a crosswalk out there or not. I think there is on one of the approaches, but that concept would provide a signal there, which would facilitate crossing at that location a whole lot better than it is currently. So just throwing that out there.
Okay.
I also wanted to point out there's a recently completed sidewalk. The new sidewalk connection through the Dolley Toll Road that provided a vital link for non-auto mobility between Tysons and Mclean, which is right here and towards Tysons. We also have other multimodal projects near this area, which will provide improvements and offer multimodal benefits separate from this project.
Okay, so this next question that's coming up, I might need a little bit of more background on it, but I'm going to see if I can try to do it. Have you considered improving the timing on the 3 traffic lights along the metro stop? Traffic is stopped at each light, creating a bottleneck.
Metro stop at top, I think that's the west side of Dallas Toll Road interchange. Is that correct?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
That's probably.
Yeah.
That's, if I can bring up the overall map. So I think the metro station, they was referred is some.
Yep, it's the Mclean station.
Yes.
That might be something we talked with VDOT about in terms of how they've got the signals time.
Right.
I think we'll just note it and we'll make sure to see how we can have a conversation with VDOT.
Yeah.
Next question is, what effect will these plans have on access to Evans Farm Drive from Route 123?
Yeah, so that was the one. Yeah, I thought I saw that one
Yep.
in there, so I wanted to address that when we were talking about concept 6, no concept 6, and so Evans Farm and Mayflower will still have, and if you happen to be one of the folks that live in the 2 homes that are on the northern side of Dolley Madison that also have a median break, all 3 of those would stay.
Okay. Thank you. Do any of the concepts between Old Dominion and Lewinsville require a taking of private property?
So
No.
so right now, the answer to right now is we don't think so, but in all honesty, that's part of the next step of this. If whatever we decide in terms of a potential solution, whether it's 1 of these, 3 of these, 5 of these, each one of them is going to have to go through a feasibility check because, and Jane remembers this, one of the things Supervisor Faust was clear about, especially in the improvements we talked about around Great Falls, Lewinsville, Dolley Madison, is we don't want to be out there needing property. And so if these things aren't going to work without requiring us taking property, he doesn't want to do them. And so that's been our charge, and we understand that. And I know Jane is getting ready to chime in. So go for it, Jane.
No, I was actually going to ask a question, if that's so.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought you were getting ready to chime in on what I was saying.
No, I agree. The last thing we want is to have any take of private property. I was just going to ask staff, you've laid out a number of good options. You're asking for community feedback. Can you expand a little bit on how you will decide, since funding is an issue, which of the various scenarios should proceed? And I'd appreciate, I'm sure that folks would want to know, because obviously there is no funding to do all of them at once.
So I want to answer Jane's question, but I think this question will help lead into helping to answer Jane's question. So there was a question that came in here. Can you please go over in more detail and a little more slowly what the components of the staff preferred alternative are and the components of the community preferred alternative? And then from there, we can talk about how that will help lead into kind of putting priority together and then kind of going after the funding.
Sure. So this table here shows the comparison between the 2 new scenarios we developed. So the first one called a community preferred. So I'm going to call the ones that included here, call them out here. So we community preferred include concept 1 and 2. Those are to provide 3 continuous lanes on eastbound along Dolley Madison. So then it will also increase 3A that has increased capacity on Lewinsville Road. Then includes concept 5 that has exclusive left turn lanes at Lewinsville Great Falls intersection. Actually, 1, 2, 3A, and 5, all of them are the improvements for the intersection of Dolly Madison and Lewinsville and Great Falls Street. Anything else you see this red cross, they are not included in the community preferred alternative because the according to the survey, the feedback from community, those concepts did not have support, so we decided not to include them in the community preferred scenario. The only one that I included in this community preferred is the Great Falls Cambridge Road, because this one was shown in the past meeting, and we saw the significant delay at this intersection. We decided to take another look, and we come up with a mitigation, and those are configuration-based changes only, with a very minimal impact. So that's what's included in community preferred. So now if you look at the staff preferred, it's very similar to community preferred, but has 4 more improvement concepts. The first one we brought back is concept 3. That's restricted left turn from Boss Hill onto Lewinsville Road. That one is trying to simplify the operation at the intersection of Boss Hill and Lewinsville Road, and also help with the spacing issue with the downstream intersection because they're very close. So another one we brought back also is called a modified jack handle. That one includes the left turn restrictions at Old Dominion Drive intersection. So those 2 are the ones, although they did not have community support, because of the benefits they demonstrated, we decided to include them in the staff preferred scenario to see how it works. And the other 2 concepts also included in the staff preferred are concept 7, which is that westbound option lane at the split to the Dallas Toll Road. So you can decide whether you want to go to Dallas Toll Road or you want to go to Tyson's. So you have a choice lane there. So that's concept 7. 8 is to extend the rightmost westbound through lane at Lewinsville Great Falls Street. So that one is just to try to provide a little bit of storage space to see if it helps distribute the queues on westbound approach. So basic concept 7 and 8, those additional improvements we developed trying to substitute the concept 6. Since that one was eliminated due to the major impact, but we know the westbound Dolly Madison has traffic issues. We still want to address those issues. That's why concept 7 and 8 were developed. Also, the Great Falls Cambridge mitigation is included in the staff preferred scenario as well for consistency. So I know it's a lot of elements here, but in general, the community preferred scenario only includes concepts that had community support based on the community feedback. Staff preferred has a few more due to the the demonstration of additional benefits they will bring to the study area. So now I will just go to the last slide that talks about priority. So this one here. So we need to prioritize the short-term improvement concept, because there's so many of them. We definitely do not have funding to do all of them. So we would like to see to do a high-level screening process on all of those improvements using factors, including feedback from community, the coordination with the supervisor's office, and look at the traffic operations, right-of-way impacts, and the cost, safety, constructability. We have a lot of factors we can use to do a high-level screening on those improvements to see whether they should move forward. So that will be the next step. I don't know whether Greg, you want to chime in here to see how we're gonna recommend some of those improvements.
Here's what I would just generally suggest. So, and if you go back to the X's and check slide, this will help me a little bit.
Sure. Oh.
Well, while we're doing that, so there's some improvements that we suggest that weren't necessarily suggested or supported by the community. There's some that we substituted in because we took one out that we knew the community didn't want. And so while I think, during this comment period, we'll accept any comment, whatever people want to provide. I personally would like to know, from the perspective of concept 4 or 4B, is, regardless of our thoughts of our preference and what we think the intersection needs, is the community just, whether it's the standard jug handle, modified jug handle, jug handle light, I mean, whatever. If there's just no jug handle, end of story. I mean, I think I'd like to know that, regardless of the modified version that we've provided, because that was a kind of a difference between what we think makes sense from an operational perspective and what the community had kind of voted on. So that's first and foremost. Similarly for the restricted less from Balls Hill. I think those two things, and then the new things that we've brought forward in terms of the option lane for the toll road and the slight extension of the westbound lane, because they're new, is that something that people, have a heartburn over? Do they think it's helpful? Do they think it's useless? To get a general idea of the areas where we got an X versus a check, where we might want to land. And if, there's some other thoughts or things that people want to put forward, I'm all for hearing that as well. But I think it might be most beneficial to look at the areas that we may potentially disagree in terms of the community preferred and the staff preferred. And I think just internally, what we may need to do, team, is look at how might we on the website kind of present this information so that, when people are preparing to provide feedback through the website, they have something to kind of click on and say, here's what we're being asked to provide kind of feedback on. That would be my suggestion. I don't know how others on the team think, or if that makes sense to you, Jane, or what.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Greg, is that a lot has happened since 2019, and we want to encourage anyone to provide feedback on anything, whether it's green or red.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
And we can look at ways to try to have the community kind of do that. Maybe it's like agree, disagree, and then we'll try to find a way to create some sort of graphic that we can add up there the community can weigh in on. Okay, I'm gonna move forward with the next question. And said, why don't you consider expanding Chainbridge Road between Great Falls and Anderson Road? That would get a lot of us on the Arlington side of Central Mclean to get off 123 eastbound at Anderson, and to take Chainbridge Road to get on 123 further west. And I'm happy to say it again if that would be helpful. It's more of a comment to note than anything else. So, thank you. The next one, in concept 4, there's a reference to a proposed raised median in the eastbound Dolly Madison lane denoted with a colored bar, green in the 2019 proposal, heading into Old Dominion. Can you explain that piece of the proposal?
It's concept 4?
Yes. In concept 4, there's a reference to a proposed raised median in the eastbound Dolly Madison lane denoted with a colored bar green in the 2019 proposal heading into Old Dominion. Can you explain that piece of the proposal? I think.
Oh, that was the old concept when we were looking at concept 6 and potentially trying to provide that through lane all the way down. This was how that was going to work. That this lane now you wouldn't need that now, because you're not going to be providing a full lane all the way down. So I don't think that would stay. If we don't do concept 6, that doesn't stay.
Greg, do you mind if I chime in real quick?
Go for it.
Yeah, so the reason for having to adjust the median there is we need to provide some distance of a third receiving lane for concept 4. So while we are showing some impacts to the median here, it's not intended to be over a significant distance, just enough time or enough distance for us to be able to receive traffic and then have them merge back. into the 2 travel lanes to continue west towards the Dulles Toll Road.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. This is just a comment. So VDOT has timed the light at Balls Hill Road so that it now has very little effect on flow through the Lewinsville Dolley Madison intersection. Left turns out of Balls Hill are much less of a problem. So that's just a comment to note.
Yeah, I'd heard that too. I think I'd heard that, and this was somewhere even before the pandemic that I think VDOT had made some changes there in terms of the timing. And so if that is the case, I think that's helpful. And I think that's, one of the ways that if there's a signal timing change that doesn't mess up everything else, that can be extremely helpful. So if that is the case, that's good to know.
Okay. The next one is kind of a comment, but you can see if it's worth if there's worth an answer in terms of if there is an answer. There is a frequent challenge on Lewinsville from the Windy Hill intersection extending west for eastbound traffic, which backs up even across the Beltway. There are times that this actually makes it nearly impossible to turn left out of Scotts Run and Timberley. So I think we're getting a little further outside the study area, but
Yeah, because this is a beltway, right? He was referring
yeah.
Yep.
So
further.
yeah, I think it's further to the west. It's good to know, but I think it's starting to get outside of the particular area in which in which it's being evaluated.
I know there's another intersection improvement project also on Lewinsville Road. Maybe with that one and what we're doing here can help with the traffic flow on Lewinsville Road.
Yeah, if nothing else, the concept of trying to, structure intersection 3 there in a way that allows stuff coming down Lewinsville, along with the potential kind of additional capacity that we're trying to provide there. If that can clear out the queues, then at least, if nothing else, this intersection will not be the cause of the backup or a backup that might get to the Beltway. If there's a different intersection further back that's outside of the area, or if it's the one just west of Old Maple and all that, that's not a part of this. But if it's this intersection causing it, part of what we're trying to do is to help from a capacity perspective to potentially minimize that queue coming eastbound on Lewinsville.
Mike, you're mute.
Thanks. Appreciate that. I had to mute for a moment. Has study been done on traffic on Ingleside if used as an alternative to turning left on Old Dominion? Today, Ingleside is backed up due to McDonald's, and Old Dominion is backed up at the intersection of Ingleside. As a part of that, they said for the jug handle, this is a different comment coming in. Are you aware that McDonald's drive-through backs up onto Ingleside regularly? So
Yeah.
that's just kind of more information to help answer that other question.
Yeah, and that whole triangle is a challenge. It's just perfectly honest. It's a challenge. One of the things that we talked about is if we're going to do this jug handle, how does the McDonald's, and quite frankly, I don't know if there's anybody here from McDonald's, quite frankly, the parking that sometimes is, or the restaurant there, the parking that's on that roadway is also something that we'd have to think about, because you're right, you don't want to send more traffic onto a roadway that's going to create more problems. And so from the perspective of stacking from the McDonald's or the parking that's there, potentially trying to figure out, is there a way to do something with the parking to allow the stacking to not be where the vehicles are traveling, or some other way to tackle that stacking so that it doesn't hinder potentially what we're trying to do. That was definitely something, and I've been out there and kind of seen, especially during certain points of the day, when you're at McDonald's that's not close to other fast food, you're gonna get that rush. And so trying to figure out how to work through that, I think is gonna be important for sure.
Okay. This is a a background question. So what consideration have you given the impact of the new mixed-use development 1800 Chain Bridge adjacent to the Mclean Metro on traffic along Dolly Madison?
So that one, when we did our traffic growth, we basically, and I think Maggie talked about it a little bit, we had what was called background traffic growth, which we, for this kind of new analysis dealing with the pandemic, we discounted, but we also included the developments that we knew were going to be coming in at the time, we were doing the study. And I believe, I don't remember, what is the name of the 1800 Chain Bridge one? I can't remember the name of the actual development, but we had like 3 different developments that we included in as far as traffic growth, because they were basically the developments we knew were going to be. Is it Scotts Run? Yeah, it could be
Scotts Run.
It could be Scotts Run. There was like Heritage and Scotts Run and Capital One. I think there was one other thing. And so we included all of those in there because we knew that they were coming, because there were traffic studies from the entitlement cases that we used to develop the traffic volumes, because we knew they were coming and we knew they would happen within the time frame that we were doing this analysis. So they're in there.
Scotts Run South. That's the one.
So I think there was that one. I think there was another residential one. There was Capital One, because at the time Capital One wasn't even open. And then I think there was one last one that we had, and I think there were 4 that we had in there.
It's the Highlands.
Highland. Thank you. I said Heritage, I think. I knew it started with an H. I got the wrong name. Sorry.
Okay. Let's see here. Next question. Would there be value to a signal at Dolly Madison and Ingleside without doing the jug handle?
Yes and no, I guess is the best way of answering that. For what we are specifically doing, from the traffic operations perspective, probably not as much. From a pedestrian crossing perspective, yeah. And so I guess that's the best way to answer that one. So depending on the thought process, I think, yeah, there could be some benefit to it. For what we're specifically doing, potentially not.
But Greg, wouldn't you get pushback from DDOT when people have raised putting a signal at Ingleside, often as a result, unfortunately, of an accident? We've been told that VDOT won't do. Well, we've been told by VDOT that they would not approve it because it's too close to the traffic signal at Old Dominion.
Yeah, I think so. From a warrant perspective, it might meet the warrants. And if it really does meet the warrants, I think even from the spacing perspective, they might allow it. My guess is that it probably doesn't, at least at the time we were asking, or that folks were asking, it probably didn't meet warrants and it was close. And so, that being said, VDOT has gotten very, not judicious, very, when it comes to signals, basically, they've started kind of a new process to look at things other than signals first.
Yeah.
Before looking at signals. And I think part of it is because they feel like too many signals get installed, in various places. And so we know that even if we were to do this, that we'd have to go through the process and work with VDOT with respect to providing a signal here, and that it's not a slam dunk. Obviously, if we're rerouting traffic and now providing more traffic here and taking things out of the other intersection and getting them all to work together, we have a better chance, versus just kind of putting one in. But there's nothing that says that even though we're proposing this, that VDOT's going to necessarily accept the signal. This is our evaluation of what we think makes sense from an operational perspective. But yeah, it still has to go through VDOT, and it has to, pass the smell test and pass the muster in that aspect as well.
Yes, I do want to point out for community preferred scenario, because concept 4 was not moving forward, so there will be no change for this area. It will stay as existing conditions. But on the staff prefer, because we are restricting left turns and reroute them. So at least in our study, we assume the signal at these 2 intersections to make sure vehicles can turn safely, and also that help the pedestrian and the cyclist as well.
So is that 4B, Maggie? I was a little confused about the difference between 4 and 4B or 4A, whatever.
Yes. I actually should have included another graphic. I don't have that one. That's why I keep coming back to this one. So this one was original concept 4, includes like a 3 left turn restriction, 2 at Old Dominion Drive, and the eastbound left turn restriction at Ingleside Avenue. With the modified concept, we call 4A or 4B. I probably should just say 4A. So Ingleside Avenue will stay the same as the existing condition. The only difference will be that because of rerouting traffic here, we probably should have signal. But then under that 4A, so the left turn restriction is proposed under that concept to give more green time to other movements. So it will help this eastbound traffic flow, because we do a lot of improvements at the intersection of Lewinsville, Great Falls Street. When all of them come here, this become a bottleneck, so it does not help the eastbound traffic flow. So if we can do a little bit improvements at this intersection, that's where the concept 4A comes in, then it will help this entire segment.
It also, quite frankly, helps Old Dominion getting out onto Dolly Madison in the evenings, which becomes a pain as well. The more you remove various parts of the cycle, like parts of the movements, the better efficiency you can get from the signal. So, if right now you got to do lefts on the main line, throughs on the main line, then lefts on the side streets, and throughs on the side streets, if you can get rid of either one of those lefts or one of those potential cycles there, then you have the ability to potentially better allocate green time for other movements and get people through the intersection more efficiently.
Okay. The next question that came in was you mentioned you have a lot of data on safety considerations. Would this safety data be available to the public? It would be helpful to better understand the safety implications of the different scenario concepts. So I guess what kind of data we're going to make available?
I don't know whether we have a whole lot of safety data. I assume we have, for the existing conditions, we looked at the crash data and crash history to understand the bottleneck and where the crashes happens. I think that's probably part of the existing condition evaluation. And typically, if we add a signal, I think that helps the safety of the intersection operations as well. Whatever we have as part of this effort, we will be more than happy to share. So I will check with our project team to see what kind of safety data we have, and make that available.
I think when we were talking about safety, I think part of it we were also talking about is, when we start getting into feasibility, because right now we're tackling a lot of the operational things and really trying to decide if things make sense from an operational perspective. And then if things make sense from an operational perspective, we start to get into some of the larger scale stuff in terms of feasibility, in terms of, right-of-way impacts, in terms of, safety benefits and all of those various things. What we were tackling here for the most part is just a large scale overarching operational analysis to decide whether or not it makes sense to even try and do anything. And then if we come back and say, oh, this makes sense from an operational perspective, then we would have to get into some of the things that deal with the feasibility and whether or not we can actually, specifically do some of these improvements. And so part of this, again, we were tackling whether or not it was even beneficial to do an improvement, if there's even going to be any support for doing an improvement, before we started to put kind of the monetary effort and the staff time into some of the hardcore feasibility things as well.
Okay. There's a question. Has there been any consideration of undergrounding Dolly Madison at the Great Falls Lewinsville intersection?
So yeah, that was part of the, we talked about potential interchange. That was kind of the interchange concept. And so if there, and it didn't really seem to be a lot of support for doing an interchange here per se, but if grade separated was the option, that would probably be one of the potential solutions. Either Dolly Madison going under, or Great Falls Lewinsville going under, or one of them going over. That would be the concept for grade separation if we were going that way.
Okay.
So the
Yes.
community feedback is mixed towards that. Some folks do think that if you need to invest, should invest in the proper infrastructure, but obviously interchanges are much more impactful. Based on our traffic analysis, we feel that with those short-term improvements, it will make traffic work. So we're trying to avoid those larger scale infrastructure at this point. But community feedback definitely was mixed.
Okay. So there's a theme that I want to kind of let you all kind of comment on, and then there's a actual question, a different question that came in. So one is, what kind of outreach coordination has been done with this particular study with the community and the nearby businesses? I think that's kind of a theme that has kind of popped up, and they kind of wanted to know what that might be.
So for the most part, we did our 2019 meeting. During this meeting, we had our survey. We're also looking in terms of, feedback with respect to this. I also think, if from an operational perspective, if there are things to move forward as we would get into the feasibility aspects of it, especially if we start getting into, potential right-of-way impacts, not on private property, but even on some of the areas on the north side of Great Falls, or if we start talking about some of the signal stuff and those sort of things, we'd probably have to go and do some specific conversations with the folks who are in the area. If we start doing anything with respect to the jug handle related to Ingleside, or related to the restaurant or the McDonald's that are out there, we'd obviously have to have a conversation about that. I'm trying to think if there are other things, but up to this point, we've done the meeting in 2019. We've done this meeting. We had the survey. We've had feedback in terms of emails and direct comments to the website itself. And so that's been the general feedback up to this point.
And Maggie, you've also been in contact with a few of the Mclean organizations that have asked for that are going to comment on this particular study.
Yes. So we actually have I think we have a community feedback technical memorandum from the past meeting. As Greg mentioned, we received a lot of responses. Some of them just filled out the survey, so the result will directly passed to us. But then a lot of them, especially for concept 6, we received a lot of emails directly. Some of them attached really long letters and with graphics, with a lot of data, basically trying to say this is too much impact to them. So we have all of them documented. So this time it will be the same, although we don't have a survey right now, so we will welcome, we would love to hear from you, your feedback on the new scenarios and the improvement concept included in each scenario. If you find the challenge, please let us know.
Okay, and then there's this final question that says, there are plans to increase residential density, specifically in downtown Mclean. Somebody's asking, I assume those are long-term issues for traffic not subject to this project. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the downtown Mclean we knew was not going to occur within the short-term time frame that we're evaluating. Obviously, if this were a long-term analysis and we were looking at the potential grade separation we talked about before, we would probably look at literally, all of the development in the general area over the next 25 years. We'd also obviously look at potential roadway improvements that, are on the comprehensive plan for 25 years in the future. But because this was a short-term analysis and we were just trying to decide whether or not there are things we could do in the interim that could, help with conditions, we didn't specifically include the long-term Mclean stuff in there.
Okay. I'm looking through and don't see any hands raised. All the questions that have come forward, we've been able to answer so far. So we'll hang out for another minute. We're getting close to the end of our time, but
Hand up. Somebody's got a hand up.
I believe this would be Jim Reagan, or I don't think it's Janet. Farouk, you can go ahead and enable the mic.
Thank you, Greg. When you and I chatted before, could we go to slide 26, Maggie?
Sure. What's
Greg, the purpose of my last question here, and I'll get off stage quickly. When you and I talked earlier, Greg, I asked you if the lane was being added westbound or eastbound. And I understood you to say westbound because the PM traffic is the most difficult traffic situation. But on slide 26, it indicates to me that the additional lane, unless I'm misreading this, would be eastbound. So am I confused or what?
So there's kind of, and we may have to go back to the slides. So the concepts 1 and 2 are east or west of Great Falls, Lewinsville, coming into the intersection.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the eastbound one. And then the other one is the one that we were talking about, which is, westbound. Go to concept, what is it, 8 or 7, I think it is.
You mean the new concept?
Yeah, go to the new concept, because
Sure.
I want to show them the other one that we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the new one instead of concept 6. So now we have, this one.
Yeah, so it's just a small kind of capacity queuing based attempt to provide some, some additional storage between Evans Farm and the intersection.
But there would be, maybe I'm still confused. And were you talking about a third lane being added in the westward direction from Old Dominion up Dolly Madison all the way through? Is that correct?
That's concept 6.
Yeah, that was the one that we decided not to do. That was concept 6 that we.
Yeah, that one was eliminated.
Yeah, we're not.
Are you talking about a third lane being added going east from Lewinsville to Old Dominion?
No, just basically leading up to Lewinsville and then a short stretch up to Evans Farm so people can get back into the 2 lanes going eastbound.
So the package behind Evans Farm and Broyhill will be 4 lanes across, basically.
Yep.
That'll stay.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for your openness. This meeting's been very helpful to me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more hands or any more questions. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. It's been very helpful. You've all provided a lot of helpful feedback. We look forward to hearing more of your feedback from the concepts and specifically some of the questions that were asked. And we'll look for a way to kind of see how we can engage you all through an active kind of dialogue, which we'll put to the website. So we'll actually, if that happens, we'll make sure to kind of send an announcement out so everybody knows that it's available. So with that, thank you to Maggie, to Greg, thank you, Jane, Supervisor's Office, and thank you to all for attending. Have a good evening, and thank you. Bye.